Welcome. This will be another very easy, I'm hoping, and straightforward a lesson that will go very quickly. The main thing is being able to write this down so you don't forget, because it's set up a little bit weird. The coordinate plane, what we're going to talk about is how the coordinate plane is cut into 4 sections. And the way they label those sections or list them, they usually always use Roman numerals, and they use this top right one where both the x and the y values are positive as quadrant 1. And then they work around to the left. That's supposed to be a Roman numeral 1, not. And then as they move around left, the top quadrant on the left is going to be quadrant 2. And then they continue around in a counterclockwise way. So the bottom one on the left will be quadrant 3. And then the bottom right one will be quadrant 4. So when it asks which point is in quadrant 4, just remember, the quadrant 4 is going to be in the bottom right. You work your way around, starting here, 1, 2, 3, 4, and that's this point here, K. So just write down on a sheet of paper really quickly this little grid that the quadrant 1 is in the top right, quadrant 2 is the top left, quadrant 3 is the bottom left, and quadrant 4 is the bottom right. Okay, which quadrant is point H in? So we find point H is in the bottom right. Remember, I always just count 1, 2, 3, 4. So as I walk toward, it's quadrant 4. And again, they use Roman numerals. An I and a 5 is quadrant 4. Which quadrant is point R in? Again, quadrant 4. They're doing a lot of quadrant 4 for some reason. Which point is in quadrant 1? Top right, where everything's positive. That's M. Okay, I'm going to jump ahead a little bit. Oh, actually, look at this. They're giving you points. Look at the coordinate plane. Which point is in quadrant 1? Now, remember, quadrant 1, and this is what you're really hopefully learning, is that in quadrant 1, everything's positive. So I come down here. If I see any negative values, I know that's not quadrant 1. The only one that's both positive is this 5, 5. That's quadrant 1. Okay, which quadrant is the point negative 3, 4? Now, we could take the time to go over to negative 3 and up to 4, or we can learn that quadrant 2, x is negative, y is positive. X is negative, y is positive for quadrant 2. Okay, which point is in quadrant 4? Down here again, I have a positive x and a negative y, because if I'm in quadrant 4, I'm to the right, which means x is positive, and I'm down, y is negative. So I'm looking for a positive and a negative number, positive 5, negative 3. Which quadrant is the point negative 2, negative 3? Now they're not even giving you a grid to look at. But just remember, think in your mind, I'm going to go left 2 and down 3. That's in the third quadrant, 1, 2, 3. Again, always if you need to, 1, 2, 3, 4, right? Just write that on a sheet of paper. That's the way they go, 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm going to jump ahead. Okay, if x is greater than 0, which means x is positive, and y is 0, where is the point located, or the point xy located? Now, this is another thing that you need to understand about the x and y axis, is if you have a point that is on one of the axes, then one of the values is going to be 0. And this is the way you'll know. It's opposite of what you kind of see. If the point is on the y-axis, then the x value will always be 0. If the point is on the x-axis, then the y value will be 0, because you're not up or down. So here, when it says x is greater than 0, that means x must be positive. That means I'm over here somewhere, but it says y is 0. So I'm going to be somewhere on this positive x-axis. I'm on the x-axis. So just try to make a mental note of that if you're on the vertical y-axis, the opposite variable is 0. X is 0. If you're on the horizontal x-axis, then the y value is 0. If x is positive and y is, if x is negative, less than 0 means negative, and y is less than 0, so that means I'm going to be to the left and I'm going to be down. I'll be in quadrant 3. Again, I'm just trying to get you to be very familiar with the coordinate system. Hopefully, none of these will be very difficult. If you do have questions, though, please bring them to class. I'll do one more here. It says if the point xy is in quadrant 3, now remember, quadrant 3, 1, 2, 3, both the x and the y would have to be negative. Because in quadrant 3, that's this one down here, I'm to the left and I'm down. X is negative, y is negative. X must be less than 0 and y must be less than 0, which happens to be the very top one. Anyway, if you have questions, please bring them to class.